We have made it to week 4 of the 2024 NFL regular season. Episode 1 of Big Apple Breakdown is here. We'll be delivering you some game picks. What could happen? What is a long shot and what is a lock for all you bettors out there? Could the Jets win? Hopefully improve to 3-1 on the year. Let's go Jets. It is a Saturday now edition of Big Apple Breakdown, and we are live.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Cimini, Jets reporter for The Athletic Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer and Jets legend Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Long.
Welcome in everyone to a Saturday edition of Big Apple Breakdown, the first ever episode of Big Apple Breakdown alongside Brandon Pockris. I am your host, Connor Long. Big Apple Breakdown here is a show. We're going to try to do it every week where we're giving you game picks, certain players, a lock, what could happen, and what is a long shot. Before we get into that, Brandon, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Really excited to bring this show to people. I think it's, in the midst of so many different Jets things going on, so many different Jets shows. Our goal here is to bring you a different spin on it, right? Still talk about the game, still give you a bit of insight into what we think is going to happen, but through a different lens, through looking at specific outcomes and specific players. And I'm really excited to get rolling.
Absolutely. Let's get right into it. Brandon, I'll throw it to you first. What is your lock for tomorrow's contest?
My lock for tomorrow's contest is Garrett Wilson over 40 plus receiving yards. And look, on the surface, it's like, hey, Patrick Surtain's on Garrett Wilson. Is he even going to get the ball that much to really make an impact? And I personally think that while Garrett might not be in store for this monster game, this 100+ yard performance, a 2+ touchdown performance, I feel like he's going to be able to beat Surtain enough and beat his opposition enough to get at least 40 yards. Because the Jets offense is going to have to feed Garrett to an extent. You can't just leave him out there and do cardio the whole game. No, you need to scheme up a few targets. You need to get the ball in his hands a little bit. So I think it's more of a combination of me trusting Garrett Wilson's skill set and also trusting the fact that the Jets need to get the ball in one of their best offensive playmakers' hands. And those two things combine, and you have what I feel is a lock of Garrett Wilson at least getting 40 receiving yards in this contest.
Absolutely, and I completely agree there. Brandon, maybe if you were to throw it at over 80 yards, that's when I might have raised my eyebrows.
Even
Aaron
50
Rodgers,
or 50
exactly.
or 60.
Exactly. Aaron Rodgers did say during his media availability on Wednesday that it might be a harder week to get Garrett Wilson, make him become really the focal point of the offense, as he will be lining up against Surtain. But over 40 yards, I definitely think he will reach that. As for my lock, I have Breece Hall as an anytime touchdown scorer. Throughout the Jets' first 3 games of the season, he scored 3 touchdowns. If you just look at the Jets' run game as a whole, I think this is going to be a key for the Jets, just a key to success overall when you look at the game, because Broncos' poor run defense, giving them the 9th most yards per game on the ground in the league. And Brendan, Alex Singleton, linebacker, was placed on injured reserve. His season's most likely over. He's their leading tackler, the only one who's really been able to stop the run on that Broncos defensive unit. That's why I think the run game as a whole for the Jets will have success. And Breece Hall, I think he keeps that trend going, gets in the end zone for the 4th time on the season. Brandon, what is a line, a bet that you look at and you say, okay, this could happen, but I'm not locking anything in?
So kind of tying into my lock, but not really, is I have Tyler Conklin scoring the first touchdown of the game at plus 1,200. And what does that really boil down to? Well, it's a mix of two things. Number one, if the Jets don't get the ball first, I have confidence that even against an opening Sean Payton first drive script, I feel like the Jets will be able to stop them on defense. And I think the Jets are going to come out aggressive on offense. I think that they are going to, in a very similar fashion to the Patriots game, come out strong, come out aggressive, and really try to put points up on the board and put Denver behind the 8 ball. because that's what we want to do against a rookie quarterback. That's what you want to do against a guy that, has had struggles already in a short season, right? He's shown improvement, but this also an opportunity to get in a young player's head and really toy with him a little bit. And I think Tyler Conklin, especially after last week, is going to be heavily involved. It wouldn't surprise me if we see the Jets drive down the field, make it look easy, and the reliable tight end is waiting wide open in the end zone for the first touchdown of the game. At plus 1,200 odds, at least according to the DraftKings Sportsbook, that's something I'm willing to, sprinkle a little bit on, right? If you're betting, hypothetically, right? Because that's, the perfect combination of a guy that's going to get targets, a guy that's going to be involved, but it's not the Garrett Wilsons of the world. It's not the Breece Halls of the world. It's not even the Braylon Allens or the Allen Lazards that have gotten in the end zone. It's a guy that is heavily involved, that will get targeted, but isn't at that upper echelon, at least publicly, and really widespread based as some of these other players. So I think it's something that could happen, isn't necessarily a lock, and is also a great value.
Absolutely. I completely agree. If you look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers over his career, kind of in the prime of his career, especially with the Packers, even towards the end of his run in Green Bay, Robert Tonyan, we saw him, just his career as a whole, he likes to go to those tight ends in the end zone. And Tyler Conklin is someone who produced very high quality numbers last season for being the, Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, and Trevor Siemian throwing him the football. I think you look at the just the Jets schedule as a whole. I think Conklin's in for a career year, and I really do like that those odds there. First touchdown score of the game, I could see something Jets at the 4-yard line, Aaron Rodgers, play action, finds Tyler Conklin, contested catch, back corner of the end zone. I definitely can see something like that. But my line that I think could happen is Allen Lazard over 70 receiving yards. I've only saw him get over 70 receiving yards one time this season, week 1, where he had 6 catches for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's when it was like, he had the drop to start that game, which, stalled out the Jets' first drive, but then he really picked it up. And Allen Lazard has looked great to start his 2024 campaign after a rough 2023 season. We saw him record another touchdown last week. But if you look at the yards, I'm really interested to see what he does with Pat Surtain on Garrett Wilson, how he exploits, you look at the Broncos cornerback room. They don't really have a cornerback room that blows me away behind Pat Surtain. I'm really looking forward to see how, the Lazard, exploits the back end, the secondary of the Broncos defense. I'm not guaranteeing anything here. I'm not putting it as my lock, but I definitely think Lazard over 70 receiving yards could happen at plus 800, according to DraftKings Sportsbook. I think he becomes a focal point of the offense, not just for this game, but the remainder of the season. Big fan of Lazard. I'm really looking forward to see what he could do as the season progresses, but that is what might could happen. Is Brandon, what is your long shot for tomorrow's contest?
My long shot is at plus 450, Aaron Rodgers throwing 3+ touchdowns. And that is not to say that I don't think Aaron Rodgers can do that. I just don't think this is necessarily going to be a game plan where they want to do that, right? Because even behind Surtain, the Broncos secondary has played at a very high level this year, and the pass rush has been pretty solid. I think they have the second best pressure rate behind the Jets this season so far. The run defense hasn't been what I would call stout, right? It hasn't been this completely locked down unit. And I think that in the midst of this team being aggressive on offense, you're going to see them still, as you said, Connor, lean heavily on Breece Hall, lean heavily on Braylon Allen. And through just simply giving those guys those types of touches, you're not going to be throwing the ball 40 times. You're not going to be throwing the ball close to 50 times. So I think it's more of a result of the game plan balance that I don't think Rodgers is going to throw for 3 touchdowns. But on the flip side, the door opens if you force a few turnovers and the Jets get immediate red zone opportunities. Or, if the Jets defense really just forces a bunch of stops and gives you more offensive drives. Or if for whatever reason, on the first drive of the game, Rodgers sees something that he can exploit repeatedly, and all of a sudden it turns into a pass-heavy game plan. The way I'm looking at it is from right now, day before the game, I feel like the game plan is still going to be run heavy. That is why I'm putting this as my long shot. But it could easily blow up in my face, and then everyone can come laugh at me about it.
Before I get into my long shot, Brandon, you mentioned the Jets. They're utilizing more of the run game. Alex Singleton, I did mention, he was placed on injured reserve. His season's most likely over. What do you think the Jets' run game looks like? Because this 1-2 punch in Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, they've looked great the first 3 games of the season. Now you're looking at a really weak run defense in the Denver Broncos. What do you think the Jets' run game looks like tomorrow?
I think you just got to stay the course. I think the process has been very sound. I just think, as you refine that design a little bit more, as you work in more things to build off the run game, it's going to become that much more effective. I think Breece is going to continue to look very good, and I think Braylon Allen is going to continue to look like one of the best rookie running backs in the league. So I think just by virtue of the nature of improvement week after week, I think you're going to see a better rushing attack. But it's also, how does Olu Fashanu play? How does he look in the run game? I think that's a big factor, but I am very excited to see how it plays out one way or the other.
Absolutely. Now let's get into my long shot. And I have this at Garrett Wilson, over 100 receiving yards. I believe the current line is at plus 550 according to DraftKings. Brandon, I know you said your lock is Garrett over 40 receiving yards, and I know we spoke about that. I think that's a great lock, and I think that will definitely happen. But most we saw out of Garrett Wilson throughout the first 3 games: 6 catches for 60 yards during the New York Jets opening matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. Nathaniel Hackett spoke to the media today. He said fans shouldn't be concerned, and this connection between Rodgers and Wilson will click eventually. But it hasn't clicked during the first 3 games. Obviously, it's interesting to see because the 49ers have the strongest secondary out of the 3 teams the Jets have played, and he got the most involved during that game. Haven't seen really much of him at all, with the exception of that performance in the first three weeks of the season. Nothing tells me that he's going to become a focal point of the offense while lining up against arguably the best cornerback in all of football. I think this is, we see Garrett Wilson ease into the system kind of as the season progresses, maybe over this next stretch of games. Nothing tells me that he's going to get over 100 receiving yards tomorrow. That's why I believe the long shots plus 550. However, you mentioned Aaron Rodgers there possibly looking, he sees something in the secondary, looks to exploit it, and the Jets now automatically switch to a pass-heavy offense. I do think that's something interesting to watch. But Brandon, one more thing before we wrap. Out of all the Jets receivers, who do you see being the most productive during tomorrow's matchup?
That's a tough question, right? Because I think a lot of that's predicated on the game plan of Denver, right? Are you going to have Surtain shadow Garrett like he did against a guy like Mike Evans? Or is he going to be more split, and that allows Garrett to exploit other types of coverages? So it'll be very interesting. I think it's either going to fall to Lazard or Mike Williams. I think Mike Williams is a very big factor in this game where his health is at may dictate how the Jets game plan is, because if he's feeling that much more healthy and takes up even more snaps, well, guess what? Now you have your guy you can take a deep shot to. And if that starts working, now you can't shadow Garrett Wilson the entire game. If Lazard starts doing things, more of that. So it's a lot of give and take, push, pull. It's like a chess match, right? Yeah. Right now, where we sit, we can think one thing, and we are making our picks based off that. But so much can change right at the start of a game. And that's the beauty of football, right? That's the beauty of football. That's
game of inches along with that as well. Yeah, that's what makes the sport. That's what makes it one of the best sports out there.
Exactly. So much can change in the blink of an eye. So, hey, I think we made some awesome picks. I think we did a really good job. We're going to have to wait and find out to see if that's the case.
Absolutely, Brandon. I completely agree. Episode 1 of Big Apple Breakdown in the books. Brandon, I know you kind of gave some thoughts there, but any final thoughts on the episode?
Very happy to be doing this. Like I said at the top of the show, I think it's going to be really fun. Really interested to see how we build this out, right? Starting off with this type of format. How are we going to change it up? If we're successful, we're going to keep going. And hey, like the Jets, like any other NFL team, if something doesn't work, you tweak it until it's perfect.
Absolutely. Hopefully the Jets can go out and collect their 3rd victory of the season against the Denver Broncos. We will be back next week when the Jets match up against the Minnesota Vikings in London alongside Brandon Pockris. I am your host, Connor Long, signing off. JTS Jets, Jets, Jets.